So Tom, I'm going to do a little intro here. Basically, the whole goal is to provide as much value as we can for the podiatrist or for the listeners here, and kind of things that you wish you knew maybe 20 years ago, and what's really helped kind of your business and your own personal life. So I'll do a little intro. Hello and welcome to Podiatry Practice Mastery. My name is Don Pelto and I have Mr. Tom Caron here, and we're going to be talking a little bit about mindset and growing your business with marketing and things like that. Welcome, Tom.
Thank you, Dr. Pelto. Nice to see you again. Thank you for inviting me on today.
You're welcome. So I want to talk about what really is passionate and what excites you about your business. Like for the last 20, 30 years, what's been really exciting for you? What are the things that you're working on?
Sure, absolutely. So I've been an entrepreneur ever since I was in my teens. And one of the things that I became most fascinated with when I was in my early 20s, which was about 30 some odd years ago, I actually became very interested in how the mind influences results. I started off doing some sales, even doing door-to-door sales when I was a teenager, became very impressed with it. But most importantly, in my early 20s, I became very fascinated with how the mind, developing the mind and how that can impact your results along the way. And spent the last 20 to 30 years really focusing on understanding and implementing and teaching others to do the same, those same skill sets.
So, I know a lot of people have maybe heard of like neuro-linguistic programming or psycho-cybernetics, and some I find I think it's like the 10, 10, 80, right? 10 are absolutely going to love what Tom is saying. 10 are say, this stuff sucks, it doesn't really work. And I think 80% are kind of sitting in there, I'm kind of interested, I've heard a little bit about it, not sure really how it works, I don't know really how to learn it. So let's talk about your progress and like how you started, or how you've worked with other people that have started and shown interest, and how can it help people's life?
Sure, absolutely. The first book that really introduced me to this concept of how powerful the mind is Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And I was actually in my early 20s the first time I read that. The first time I thought it was very dry and uninteresting, and it took me a while to go back to it. But when I went back to it the second time, it actually ignited something inside of me. And when I learned to understand how the mind works, and by developing an understanding and focusing on that, it can really have a dramatic impact in all areas of your life, whether that be your personal life or your professional life. And that really set me on a path to wanting to understand the power in it even more so.
So for those that are listening, certainly I'll put a link to Think and Grow Rich book. What are some ways people that can, let's talk some practical stuff when you're working with someone? How do you decide, what are some techniques of developing this? Is it daily reading? Is it, having a coach? How do people go about kind of changing their mindset, or even thinking like, who needs this? Does everyone listening need this, or do certain people, how do they self-select?
Yeah, I'm sure if your listeners really stepped back and said, is all areas of my life working at 100%? The answer to that would probably be no.
Correct.
They may have some areas of their life that are working great and other areas of their life that are not working so well. If they come to understand what it is that's working in those areas that are working, they can use those same strategies and focus them on other areas of their life that are not working so well. And the key to that is coming to understand what it is specifically that they're doing to make those areas work, and then implement those specific things into those other areas of their life.
Okay, let's dive down. I'm assuming most of the people here that are listening are good podiatrists. Okay, it's probably working well for them. They're probably making okay money. Their patients are probably happy. And how can someone take the skills that they've learned being a good doctor, and let's say maybe their health isn't doing too well. They're out of shape. They've gained weight. How can you apply doctoring? I'm just challenging you here because this is kind of fun. How can you take doctoring skills that they've learned and apply that to weight loss and exercise and stuff like that?
Absolutely. So if they were to step back and say, what's making me successful as a podiatrist? I show up on time. I'm committed to the people that I'm working with. I show that I care about the end result. If they just took those few things and focused them on self, every one of those things that you mentioned, health, fitness, wellness, all of those things would be impacted by that. How can you show up on time for yourself to take yourself out to go to the gym or to go for a run, or even just to get up in the morning and do some stretching exercises.
Mhm.
If you showed that same level of commitment to yourself as you did your patients, that would set you on a positive path.
I think that the whole idea of this self-reflection and evaluation, I think we don't give enough time to it because it needs time, a dedicated maybe with yourself time or thinking time. What are some of the habits, like these daily rituals that you have that you think have really helped your mindset and helped you just have a great life?
Absolutely. So first thing is get up earlier than everyone else around you. That way it's nice, quiet time, solitude time with yourself. It allows you to think about your day. It allows you to plan out your day and do some things that will really set your mind into the right space, whether that be a little bit of meditation. Maybe you want to just listen to some music and relax and think about how you would like your day to flow. Now, the reality is we can visualize how it's going to flow, but life happens. It doesn't often go the way we want it to. But if you have some type of direction as to how you would want it to go, you can get back on track. You really can get back on track.
Yeah, go
And
ahead, keep going. This is
and
good.
then take some time to do some reading that's going to set your mind in a positive place. It might be a self-help book, it might be inspirational stories, it might be poems, or it might even just be listening to music that puts your mind in the right place.
Let's talk a little bit about like psychocybernetics. They talk a lot about like the screen that's in your mind and visualization. I know a lot of us have heard about a lot of the great runners and athletes do that frequently. How do you apply that, or those that you work with? How do they actually, what are the habitual things? Because one thing you mentioned, you try this, you do this in the morning. And what I think you're saying, Tom, is you don't just do this one day. You do this daily for your half hour or 1 hour ritual for like 30 days till you get used to it, because it's going to be very uncomfortable for habit change.
Yes,
Is that right?
Absolutely. It has to be something that you do consistently the first couple of times you do it. If it's quite different from your normal routine, it is going to feel really awkward at first. The thing I relate it to, like the most recent thing I can relate it to, is the recycle, taking your bags into the supermarket. Like, we're so conditioned, many people are conditioned not to do that. And it's so easy to walk into the store and forget them in your car, or to forget them at home before you even leave, because we're so used to having that bag ready for us at the store that it's hard to break that pattern. So it's very, very, it's real important to visualize yourself going through that process. And then the more you visualize it and you physically do it, then it's going to become a habit. And once the unconscious mind picks it up and it becomes a habit, you can do it without even thinking about it. And that's the cool thing about the unconscious mind, is once you get it in autopilot, you don't even have to think about it. It just becomes a normal routine that you can do without even having to consciously think about it.
Yeah, there's a couple of books I'll put at the end of this interview. One is called Atomic Habits. The other one's Miracle Morning. Both of those kind of talk about these types of things. And I think this reading, so I'll share my morning ritual, because all I can really control is my morning ritual and my evening ritual. Everything that happens in between, I can't control. And you can share yours after. So you're going to probably laugh, but we probably do similar things. So I get up usually an hour or an hour and a half before. So usually it's either 5:30 on every days except when I work out. And when I work out Monday and Friday, I get up at 5:15. And I do workouts Mondays and Fridays, boot camp. But the other days I do a 2-minute cold shower, 10 minutes of something called Wim Hof breathing, read my Bible, my yearly thing to get through it once a year, 10 pages in a good book. I'm reading Norman Vincent Peale. He's got a 3-book series. I read books twice. So I read them. It's a 500-page book. I'm the second time through it now. You can't read it the first time because you don't get it the first time. And I write everything in the book. And then, so after I do that, then, so that's the reading, I do the Bible, and then I do my gratitude journal. So it's called the 5-minute journal, the gratitude journal. And then usually I don't have any time. So then usually I'm leaving for work. If I have time, then I'll the week I plan on Wednesday, I plan the following week. So this morning was Wednesday. I plan for the following week, this Wednesday. That's my 1 hour of planning time. So that's kind of my morning, and my evening ritual is very similar, except I usually like study I do a prayer time, study the Bible, and then, things like that. That's kind of how my rituals go. How do your rituals go?
Yeah, so I pretty much do the same thing 7 days a week. And that is I like to wake up most often 4:30 every morning. And like to have my cup of coffee. That's the first thing I do, and just sit down and relax and just get my mind in the right place. And then typically I'll either switch on to reading something on the internet that's inspirational, or
Mhm.
I'll pick up a book and read, about 10 pages. I like to make that commitment to do that consistently. I think that
Wonderful,
that's
isn't it?
really important. Yeah, because it really sets your mind in the right place. Most people think they have to read, half a book or spend 45 minutes reading a book a day. You don't. Just 5 to 10 pages, even that minimal commitment every day can really just set your day in the right direction. But not only that, over time, all that collective information and motivation that you received does inject itself into the unconscious mind, and it does influence day after day after day of doing
Yeah,
that. It just has a dramatic impact on how you conduct yourself throughout each day, for sure.
that's great. I forgot the coffee. I'm a big coffee. I'm like doing a ton of coffee. Uh, I cannot explain how much the 10 pages, like if you could take one thing away, those that are listening, the 10 pages a day is a life changer. And like I got through this 500-page book, and it's just by 10 pages a day, and it wasn't hard at all. And so I kind of think of like what you've said. Well, I want to read other stuff. How do I apply that same thing? So I have this other kind of a technical book I'm wanting to get through. I'm reading 1 page a day. It's like 500 pages, but who cares? I'm doing 1 page a day and I'll get through it. This is the idea of the whole, like the idea of slight edge or atomic habits or whatever you want to call it. Like that's key. Wow. Yeah. So that's the daily inspiration. You do the podcasts and things like that. What do you do for like a positive focus? What works? I do this gratitude journal. What do you do?
Yep, I actually have a gratitude method that I use myself also. I don't do it every day. I probably do that 3 to 5 times a week,
Mhm.
and just make a list of things that either small goals that I've achieved or larger goals that I've achieved, or just things like maybe I met a new person and there's a positive connection. I'll write that down and then maybe put a few words like, and I'm open to whatever comes of this experience. Sometimes it turns into business. Sometimes it turns into a great new friendship. Sometimes they introduce me to somebody else, and that's where the magic happens. So you just, even just writing down those things that in most people will look at those and say, that's so simple. Like, why would you write that down? Because when you focus on even those smallest things that happen, it just opens up opportunities and opens up new doors that would never, ever happen unless you made that small thing into a big deal.
I think the positivity and gratitude is transforming. Um, let's just kind of get really kind of deep into this for those that are listening. If they've made it this far, they're either thinking we're crazy or they like this stuff. So, what are your systems for dealing with fretting, worrying, things that keep you up at night? Like, what tools do you use for those type of hard things?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the thing about our brain is that little voice in your head is always going to be running, meaning that even if it's talking trash, it's always going to be running, and you can't always shut that off. In fact, you can't shut it off because it does what it does. However, that does not mean that you can't still stand up and take positive action in the midst of all that. And a perfect example of that is there are some things that I can say I'm going to do it at 5 o'clock, and I do it at 5 o'clock. And there are other things, like sometimes going for a run. As much as I love doing that several times a week, to say I'm going to do it Saturday at 4 o'clock, it doesn't usually happen, because for whatever reason, when I set that as a specific time to run, as much as I love running, the action of getting the actual steps to get to where I like to go run is the part that I could actually talk myself out of it. So no matter what's going on in my mind, I take myself through the action steps that I need to get to the place that I want to go for a run, and then I just run. I don't think about it, because if I listen to the voice in my head, I will literally talk myself out of it.
You won't do it. I have something similar. And so I try different things. I do a boot camp Mondays and Fridays.
Mhm.
And what keeps me there is I have to sign up for it a week in advance. And if I don't go, I get charged, I think it's $20 a session. That's how much I pay. If I don't go, I have to pay like $30 more on top of the 20. So they charge me if I early cancel. So if I cancel before 24 hours, I have to pay 30 on top of the 20.
Oh,
And so it's a good thing like that. And so I like the boot camps because I go there and someone tells me what to do. And if I cancel, I get a fee, and I'm too cheap to pay for that fee. So, I'm more accountable to other people. So I think that's another thing that you can sometimes do. What can you join, whether it be a Weight Watchers or a group or something like that, in terms of having that community that keeps you accountable? I think that's really key.
yeah, absolutely. Those are great points. Those are really great points. Whenever you can have that level of accountability, whether it be the group, whether it be a friend, whether it be a coach, those things can have such a dramatic impact on taking your life to the next level and your business to the next level, for sure.
Let's talk a little bit about, I know if you like these topics, you also like the whole idea of personal responsibility. So for a lot of times, let's say a doctor, he's working for someone else and he feels kind of as a victim. Oh, I'm just an employee. I can't do this. They didn't give me the computer that I need. They didn't give me that course that I need. These kind of victim type of mentality. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of, no matter what it is, even in a relationship or a job, how to be 100% responsible for what you can do versus being a victim?
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes when we're in that place where we're listening to that voice in our head, the victim voice, the one that you just spoke of, like I said, that voice is always going to be there. Even though I spend every day doing something positive and reading positive things, I still have that voice in my head sometimes that talks against that. However, you can still take the positive action even in the midst of those things. And the most important thing to do is to make sure that you allow yourself, when you're in that situation, when you're feeling like the victim, like everything is working against you, is just really kind of step back and say, in this exact moment, what specific things can I do that can change the outcome of the situation?
That's perfect. Yeah. And, I have a couple of tools that work for me. One, I call it the conversation in my head. So a lot of times if I'm with someone like my partner in the office and I think whatever, I just tell them, I say, the conversation in my head is that maybe you're upset with me or I'm not producing enough and you don't like me. And I share that conversation in my head, or I share it with someone else, or I even share it with a patient. The conversation in my head is that, you're displeased with the surgical outcome. And, I'm concerned as well. Is that what you're feeling? I think sharing our internal conversation is sometimes liberating, and you're not blaming anyone. Because if you say, hey, you don't like me, do you? No. Well, the conversation in my head is maybe, are you displeased with me or something like that? And getting those out, I think, is really that internal dialogue. I think it's really therapeutic. Another tip that works well for me is when I'm going through these things where I can't sleep at night, there's something I've learned. It's called you probably have a different name for it when you coach people, but it's called an experience transformer. So in any circumstance, let's have a bad surgical outcome. We'll talk about that. Okay. Because occasionally that happens. There's always something good. So I write down first, like this surgery, I did a bunion surgery and it went south, for example, and the patient wants to litigate or something like that. And I've lost a lot of sleep over it. I'm losing sleep over it. I write down what went well. Maybe I worked with the resident. I did the best that I could. I write down what didn't go well. Maybe I didn't put the fixation in properly. I was too rushed. I was too distracted. Then the key is like what worked, what didn't work, what would I do different next time? So I kind of think of, well, if I was going to do it again, what would I do different next time? And I think that takes responsibility. I can't change what happened in the past, but I can take that as raw material for the future of what I would do different. And then I kind of plan out, well, and then what's my plan? So I've done that personally, and I've done similar, like one thing I've done, I'm going to make a list of surgeries that I just don't do anymore, and I'll refer out to other people. And it's just given me a lot of peace of mind for certain things like that within the practice. Do you have any other mind games or things that you work with clients? like that.
Yeah, I really liked your process, Dr. Pelto, because basically you are coaching yourself. You're doing exactly with yourself what a coach would take you through. If you came to a coach and said, "This is my challenge, this is what happened the other day," a coach would walk you through that process exactly that same way.
Okay,
And
good.
the neat thing about that is you actually took yourself through that process, which is
Yeah.
excellent, which is
Well,
excellent.
let's get into that. Let's talk about coaching a little bit, Tom, because I know you coach people,
Correct.
and some people can do some of it on their own. You probably coach yourself. When does someone know, or when would someone benefit from having? I think there's a lot of different names: a therapist, a life coach, a health business coach. Um, People that are listening, they may have never considered. They're like, I don't need a coach. Who would benefit, or who do you coach?
Yeah. So this is a good rule of thumb to follow. Like if you're still doing the same things that you were trying to change 6 months ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and you're still doing those same things and there's still obstacles in your path of developing your business and yourself, definitely that would be a time to see somebody else to give you some support. You could see a therapist. I've done work with a therapist, and it was before I was introduced to NLP and some of the other modalities that I use in my coaching business. And that's a great route. However, one of the things that I love about coaching is that our goal is to help the client create change in the shortest amount of time. We don't want you still coming back in 6 months or 12 years from now, still working on the same things. We want to help you create a dramatic change in an area of your life that isn't working in a very short period of time. Sometimes that's 1 or 2 sessions, depending on which techniques we use. Sometimes it might take a month, and you can always come back for a tune-up, so to speak. But the reality is, the neat thing about a coach is, again, we help you to make a dramatic change in a short period of time in an area that is not working in your life.
It's interesting, Tom, because I think a lot of us, we look at like 2021 when we're recording this. If you look at, what were my issues in 2020? Are they the same issues now? And, I think we all try to work through things, but sometimes we just need help. And I think you can try to read books about it. You can try to work on it on your own. You can talk to people. But every time I hear about coaching, they always say like all the best athletes, like everyone has coaches.
Yes, absolutely.
And it's nothing to be, oh, I don't need one or I can figure it out. Well, I'm not sure we can. I think everyone should have a coach, and people should have coaches in multiple areas. You might be a good coach for business, but not so much for relationships or emotional issues. Like, what's the big hang up with people? Is it the money? Like, is coaching really expensive? Like, what's the big hang up for people not doing it?
They may say on the surface that it's the money situation, but in most cases, it's a fear of looking at self, because the coach is actually going to get you to look in the mirror and to take responsibility. That word that you mentioned a few minutes ago, responsibility, take that self-responsibility. They're going to get you to look at yourself and help you to understand that you can dramatically change any area of your life. If you take the right action steps and step into it, you can make that happen. And sometimes people don't want to take that responsibility. It's much easier to say, oh, this isn't working because of that out there, rather than looking at self and accepting that you can make those changes in
Yeah.
any area of your life.
Tom, kind of doing a 360, and afterwards I'm going to ask like how people can learn more about you, but taking the 360 back, when we started podiatry school, for example, like we thought that was one of these brick walls that was impossible, that we could never be a doctor or a surgeon. And by slowly learning and applying ourselves, and it was really slow, like learning, but you just consistently work towards it. You got there. Like everyone that's listening there has got there. But I think there's other areas of our life, like there's no school for, well-being or for peace of mind or things like that. And we kind of just get stuck, and you don't have a designated process of like what to learn, what books to read. And I think sometimes what I find with a coach is they can just kind of speed up that process. Like you said, you might get there on your own if you keep diligent. Like I think anything, you write it down. You got a little time for yourself once a day. You write down the problem and you write down solutions. You're eventually going to get there. But I think a lot of times having a coach, they can give you certain thinking tools to speed up the process. And I think that's it. So. Yeah, well,
Absolutely. And you made me actually think of something. I had breakfast with a friend this morning, and we were having a conversation, and I was saying that I was, working with a client, and I just happened to notice some things that I hadn't noticed in my previous interaction with this client. And all of a sudden I was scrolling Facebook, and in my memories today, a quote popped up. And the answer to that I was looking for with this particular client was in that quote.
Hmm.
And that's the neat thing. Like you'll make those connections as you start doing this kind of work, whether you're working with a coach or whether even you're working with yourself. As you start making these steps forward, you're actually going to recognize and get answers and solutions to these things that keep coming up just in what's going on in your everyday. You'll see a sign somewhere, or you'll read an article, or somebody will tell you about a book. And in that book will be the exact answer that you were looking for to that particular problem.
And it's because you're aware of it, because you're aware of the actual question. Before, you didn't even know the question exists. So if people want, let's say people want to learn more on their own, do you have a couple of websites? And if they want to work with you, how can they learn more about you, Tom?
Yeah, so you can connect with me on LinkedIn. It's Tom J. Caron. That's Caron, Tom J. Caron on LinkedIn. And also my website, which is tomjcaron.coach, tomjcaron.coach.
Cool.
And either of those. And actually, if you connect with me on Facebook too, I actually provide a lot of inspirational quotes and articles and things like that that can help you overcome many of these things that we're talking about today.
Great. Well, I appreciate your time and your inspiration and talking to different people about these different ideas. I think they're a little uncomfortable sometimes for us, these doctor folks, but I think some people might resonate with this message. So thank you.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I appreciate the invitation to be on here to share with you today.